Welcome back to another episode of the Colts Brawl podcast, guys. I hope y'all's week is starting off great. I hope y'all guys are energized from the weekend, ready to go. We have a great episode in store for you guys. I am your host, Michael Terraza, joined by me. Welcome back, Cody Felger. We missed you last week, bud. And joining us again is going to be Justin Brawl Bowerly.
Yeah. You got it the second time. There you go.
Bowerly. I was going to say Brawl. Hey, man.
Colts Brawl.
But nonetheless, man, welcome back, guys. It's great to have our first episode all together. For those of you who don't know, Justin is our social media manager. We have brought him on to the podcast because he has earned it. He has deserved it. We're glad to have you here, Justin. How are you guys feeling?
I'm doing great. This weekend was beautiful, 72 and sunny. You can't ask for much better weather.
Oh, yeah, same. Yeah, it's good to be back. I know I missed it. You always have that itch when you miss a week, so definitely good to be back.
All right, well, all of that is good. You know, I wish I could enjoy that 72-degree heat down here in Texas, but unfortunately it's like 98, 99. Humidity makes it feel like 105, man. So whatever you guys do not move to Texas. But getting us in the groove here, guys, I know usually I am the one that's, I guess you could say, taking the lead, going, getting us through our talking points and everything. I am actually going to step to the side, and Justin is going to step in, and he's going to be getting us going, with our talking points and everything. So with that, I will go ahead and slide it to you, Justin.
All right, so I want to talk about a couple things here coming up in the world of the Colts. It should be known that Philip Rivers he made his move to Indy. All 9 children, his wife, God help them, all 11 of them are living in a house somewhere in Indianapolis now. Now, with that being said, he is meeting up with some of his receivers now. He's meeting up, throwing the ball around with both Paris Campbell and Jack Doyle. Both are in the area right now. I mean, we all know Jack Doyle came from Indianapolis. So, Cody and Michael, I got to ask you guys, what do you guys think and make of Philip Rivers throwing the ball around to Paris and Jack this early? I mean, he hasn't met with T.Y. He hasn't met with any of the other receivers, but he's met with these two. How do you think that's going to translate into the offseason and going into the season?
Well, I think that's actually a really good thing, because when you look at these two players, they're two players who have their own kind of spotlight on them. When it comes to Jack Doyle, he's almost like, it's escaping my mind right now. Mr. Reliable 2.0 behind T.Y. Hilton. Okay, I think it's important for Philip Rivers to get that chemistry down with Jack Doyle. He is the number 1 tight end. He's a really good blocking tight end. They have to get a rapport together, because right now, I mean, we are high on Michael Pittman Jr., we're high on Paris Campbell, but Jack Doyle seems to be the number 2 option behind T.Y. Hilton. So I think that's important to get that chemistry down there. And with Paris, we all know what kind of year Paris had. Injuries riddled. We saw some flashes that the Colts really want to use him in specific situations. And I think getting in with Philip Rivers, who already knows this offense, who knows everything about it, I think it's really good for him, because not only is he going to be used in those jet sweeps, those out routes, underneath routes, but Philip can get him, he is a teacher, and he is going to get him accustomed to those routes that they said he couldn't run coming out of college. So he's going to get a more rapport with Philip Rivers, which I think is big. T.Y. Hilton, I think they'll pick it up fast. T.Y. Hilton learns with everyone. So that's where I'm at on those two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned Jack Doyle. I mean, he's been Mr. Reliable, playing with not just Andrew Luck, but all the other quarterbacks. And, he's continued to put up solid numbers. Obviously, he's not, the most athletic or gifted tight end out there, but he's just a guy that consistently catches the ball. He's probably one of the most reliable hands in the NFL. And I just think it's going to be huge for a guy like Philip Rivers. We know how much he likes to get everybody involved, not just his receivers, but also his tight ends. We saw that with Hunter Henry and obviously Antonio Gates for so many years. And so, I think it's a good thing that he's getting the rapport with Jack Doyle early. That security blanket in the middle. I just think overall it's going to be good for Phillip Rivers early. And then as far as Paris Campbell, you're right, Michael. There's a spotlight on Paris Campbell because last year, obviously, he didn't have a great season in terms of health. It seems like every time he was getting healthy, he'd get hurt again. And so, but he did show flashes last year of, the kind of game-breaking speed that, the Colts saw when they took him in the second round. And so I think it's going to be good for Paris Campbell more so than Jack Doyle, because obviously Jack Doyle's been in the league for years now. He's played with different quarterbacks. So definitely good for both of them. But, you mentioned it, Michael, about just Paris Campbell and getting him involved in the offense. I honestly think that obviously he has to get his health right and in check and be sure to play, most of the games, if not all 16 games. But,
Definitely.
Frank Reich talked about that whole RPO game, right, of getting the ball out of his quarterback's hands into the playmakers' hands and letting them do things. And so, we even saw throwing it back to that Pittsburgh game, right? Whenever Paris Campbell got the ball in his hands, he was electric. He had over 100 scrimmage yards that game. And so I think it's good for a guy like Paris Campbell, really basically another rookie. I mean, beyond he played a few games, but he doesn't have much experience at the NFL level yet. And so I think it certainly, is good to get the rapport early with a quarterback like Phillip Rivers, quarterback who likes to, spread the love, if you will, with all of his receivers and all of his targets. And so I think it's really good for both these guys, definitely for Paris Campbell's development moving forward.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that having both of them around for Phillip to get going, that's just going to help him in the long run, not just Jack Doyle and Paris Campbell, but helping Phillip Rivers out as well. So moving on to help out Phillip Rivers, we've got Quentin Nelson here. Everybody knows Quentin Nelson. Yeah. Did you guys see that Pro Football Focus ranked Quentin Nelson the 4th best player in the league? Not just the best offensive lineman, but the 4th best player in the league. Do you guys think that's too high? Do you guys think that's right where it needs to be? What do you guys think about the 2-time All-Pro, Pro Bowl guard for the Indianapolis Colts?
Well, I mean, when you look at his record, when you look at his resume, it speaks for itself. 2-time All-Pro, like you said, first team All-Pro. He is the best guard in football. Hell, he's probably the best offensive lineman in football. And this is what was said about him coming out of college. You knew what he was. He was a mauler. He is going to elevate your offense. Even though he's a guard, tackles are the more coveted offensive lineman position. But being drafted at number 6 overall, man, he has lived up and even past his hype. He has lived up to it. I am certainly, I agree with that, because just looking at his tape, I know his biggest fan, Brian Baldinger, completely, hypes him up and everything, and rightfully so. Quentin Nelson just does so many things right, man. He does everything right. When he pulls, he's so good. He is so athletic. He's getting to the second level so easily, pushing his guy out of the way, the movements, everything, the stunts, everything, okay? He is the best offensive lineman in football. He's probably the best player on the Colts because he's just a complete package. And, there's really not much to say on that. We all know what he is and who he definitely will become. I'm probably going to say he's going to become a first ballot Hall of Famer if he can get a Super Bowl ring. But as of right now, man, it is going really good for Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, and when you talk about generational talents, look no further than Quentin Nelson, a guy out of Notre Dame that just has absolutely dominated ever since he's come into the league. And he's the guy that, he's obviously dominated whenever he's played, but he's also transformed that offensive line. Honestly, obviously Braden Smith has had a factor in that as well, but he's changed the whole mindset of that offensive line. You look back the year before he was drafted, 2017, the Colts let their quarterback be sacked the most in the league. And then you fast forward 1 year later, and the Colts have one of the best pass-protecting offensive lines in the league. And so I think, his leadership on that offensive line, obviously his ability is incredible. He's the best offensive lineman in the game, but it goes beyond that just to how it translates to everybody else on an offensive line. I honestly feel like, because of how great Quentin Nelson is, he's allowed Anthony Costanzo to have a lot better years the last couple of years. Ryan Kelly's really stepped up his game. and it's just helped the people around him. And I think that can't be understated as well. Just a tremendous player. Absolutely. So, Quentin Nelson at 4, I have no quarrels about that.
And I want to say something real quick before you go, Justin. When you talk about he changed the offensive line, Cody, I mean, we all know the heart of that offensive line is Anthony Costanzo, but the vocal leader, the mean streak leader of that line is Quentin Nelson. You saw a complete attitude adjustment when he walked into that building. I feel like Anthony Costanzo got more aggressive. I mean, am I wrong? In his first year, I saw Anthony Costanzo be more aggressive in the run game. And Quentin Nelson, he started the run the damn ball movement. He goes up to Frank Reich and says, I want you to run the ball. Ryan Kelly doesn't do that. Anthony Costanzo doesn't do that. Braden Smith doesn't do that. Glowinski doesn't do that. Quentin Nelson has changed not only that offensive line, but everyone's mindset on the offensive line. He pushes them to get even more meaner, more aggressive. And as an offensive line, how can you get any more aggressive than what you're supposed to? Try bringing that behemoth in your locker room and see what happens.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And just looking back at some of the other notable players, even in the top 50 for Pro Football Focus, the next offensive lineman is at number 34.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we got Brandon Brooks from the Philadelphia Eagles. He is the next offensive lineman at 34. That just shows you how good Quentin Nelson is. And if you want to talk about the top 3, can you guys guess who the number 1, 2, and 3 spots are?
Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, I am going to say, number 2.
Aaron
Is it
Donald.
a pass? Aaron Donald. I'll go with Aaron
guess.
Donald. Okay, that's them. And then number 3,
be some skilled position or something. Some premium position.
I'm gonna go. No, he's too young. I was gonna say Nick Bosa. Number 3. Hold on. Dang it! Hit me with it, Justin.
All right. So first, you guys are very, very close on Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald was ranked number 1. Patrick Mahomes is ranked number 2, which he's up actually from 3 or 4 last year. And then Julio Jones is ranked number 3.
What?
Really?
Yes. George Kittle, who was ranked number 1 last year, is down to number 5, just behind Quentin Nelson. So
wow.
You got a top 5 of Donald, Mahomes, Jones, Nelson, and then Kittle. And then Michael Thomas at number 6. So I'm kind of curious as to why they put Michael Thomas at 6 and Julio at 3. I'm not saying that they're wrong because they put Quentin Nelson in the top 5, but they do make some questionable decisions there.
Well, I mean, talking on this real quick, I mean, put Julio Jones on the Saints and then put Michael Thomas on the Falcons. Julio Jones's numbers is going to be even, if not more than Michael Thomas. If you put these two wide receivers together, Julio Jones is faster. He's stronger. He's a more complete wide receiver. The Saints playbook is literally a cheat code for Michael Thomas.
Especially when you don't drop the ball, too. So, I mean, you're going to get more targets from Drew Brees. And if you don't drop the ball, I mean, imagine if they had Michael Pittman Jr. down there.
Huh. Oh, man.
That would be ugly. Saints winning the Super Bowl, calling it. No. So I'm glad I'm glad Pittman Jr.'s up in Indy. So okay, so that was Pro Football Focus. Let's move on just a little bit here. Let's talk about free agency. We haven't talked about free agents in a little while, and I just want to talk about who is still out there and what we still have out there in cap space, and then who we could potentially even bring on to help our team even more. So we have $24.2 million left in cap space. We still have guys like Jadeveon Clowney, Larry Warford, and Logan Ryan, all free agents at the moment. Of those 3 players, do any of those really fit our team? Do you think we could potentially use the player on our team to help further? And then do you want to take a chance on any of those three guys?
The only guy I see helping is Logan Ryan. I think he's still a quality corner. I'm actually really surprised he hasn't been picked up. I think it's because of his asking price. I think he wants like $20 million, I believe. I think that's his asking price. That's why Tennessee didn't resign him. I wouldn't take a chance because I'm just not going to invest that much money into him. Larry Warford, look, he's a guard. Quentin Nelson is our best player on the team. And then we just drafted Danny Pinter, who I'm very high on for the future. So I'm going to say no to him. And then Jadeveon Clowney, if you can swallow your ego and forget that you were the number one pick and you haven't had double-digit sacks at all in the NFL and say, you know what, I'll take $14 million a year, I might take him, but the boneheaded plays are just not for me. I'm going to side with our young guys on the defensive line, defensive end, and I'm just going to say no to all of them.
I would have to say, out of any of them, probably Larry Warford, just because, yeah, you drafted Danny Pinter, but, he can play backup guard, backup center. But you throw in a guy like Warford, who's still a really quality guard. I mean, he's still under 30, so, you don't have to sign him to a long-term contract. And it's an upgrade over Mark Lewinsky, and maybe he competes with Lewinsky for that right guard spot, or at the very least, he's a quality, another backup interior guy that you need. We know how much Chris Ballard values, just having 8, 9, 10 offensive linemen, quality guys that if one of those guys goes down, you have a guy that can step in and fill a good role. And so that's the reason why I would want Larry Warford out of any of these guys, just because I know the emphasis that Chris Ballard plays on the offensive line. And the Colts got really lucky last year with really no injuries on their offensive line to their starters. And so for me, yeah, I would definitely say Larry Warford out of any of those guys. I think he'll probably be the cheapest guy too. And yeah, out of all those guys, probably Larry Warford. The other two guys probably are just asking too much money for my liking, and you've already invested into both those positions in the draft. And so I kind of want to see what some of these young guys have before I would go sign any of those two guys.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you a little bit, Cody, about Larry Warford at least. I mean, he's 28 going into his year 29 season. He's played right guard pretty much this entire time, so he'd be an upgrade over Glowinski, and Glowinski would kind of become that Joe Haig position where he could fill in any of the spots. I mean, he was already the starter all season last year. He would be an upgrade, and he would allow Glowinski to really mold and grow a little bit more back into his starting position. So I think even a 1 or 2 year deal for him would be pretty solid. And Jadeveon Clowney, yeah, this guy has been on the decline since 2017. I talked about this a little bit on a different podcast, that 2017 is actually his only season that he's played all 16 games, believe it or not. And since then, he's just been on, the decline on everything from tackles. 2017, he had 41 tackles. 2018, he had 47. And then last season, he only had 21. Injuries are going to plague him. He's not going to get 20 or 18 million. I think you're right, Michael. He's going to have to drop his asking price down to 14 or 15 before any teams are going to really find him serious. Yeah. All right, so Jamal Adams still on the Jets at the moment. I don't think he has any interest in playing as a Jet this season. Do you guys feel any different on that?
When it comes to Jamal Adams, I'm a little 50-50. When it comes to the Jets, I think they're going to ask a lot for Jamal Adams. I can tell he doesn't want to play for them anymore. I wouldn't want to play for that organization either, especially the way it's constructed. But when it comes to the trade asking and everything, we could offer Malik Hooker, but I think you would still have to involve a first-round pick because Jamal Adams is a very, very good safety. He's an all-pro safety, first team all-pro. And you're going to have to give up something. If not a first rounder, then a second rounder. I don't see the Jets taking anything less than Malik Hooker and a first or second rounder. But I probably just wouldn't. You know what? Probably I'm actually going to change my decision in the middle of a show. I think I would probably pull the trigger on that because when I literally just analyzed it in my head, you don't know if Julian Blackmon is going to be the same on that ACL, but he could be a very good backup. So bring in Jamal Adams, a speedy, rangy safety with Kari Willis, who is also a speedy, rangy, hard-hitting safety. And man, that secondary, the top half of that secondary at least, looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is, in theory, that would be good. But you mentioned you just drafted Julian Blackmon. You're not 100% sure with Malik Hooker if you're going to bring him back next year. So for me, you just traded a first-round pick this last year for DeForest Buckner. I mean, if Chris Ballard believes that he can, I don't know. I'm kind of torn because, he's such a good player, but also Chris Ballard just invested, a third-round pick into another safety. And so I think for me, I would kind of let it play out, especially like you said, Michael, the Jets are going to be asking a ton for Jamal Adams. And I don't know if I'm Chris Ballard, if I want to give away another first-round pick this early. And so for me, it's going to be a tough decision, but I think I would rather just kind of see how it plays out with Malik Hooker and with, Julian Blackmon and Kari Willis and just kind of see from there. But yeah, I guess that's where I'm at as far as the Jamal Adams situation.
See, I think that's like that right there. I think I would think a little bit differently because even though you're right, you may not want to invest another first-round pick, but you could have 3 all-pro defensive players on your defense. You have DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, and you can add a Jamal Adams when you're in the same conference and you're going to see a Lamar Jackson. I think it would be a great idea to have an all-pro at every level of the defense, the defensive line, the linebacking core, and the secondary. Patrick Mahomes, Ben Roethlisberger, these up-and-coming stars who are already stars, these great teams that we're going to see. And I value defense much more than offense. And here's a little, I guess you could say a secret. When I watch Colts games, I watch the offense on the couch. When the defense comes on, I stand on my feet and watch the defense. I love defense. If I'm Chris Ballard and I know this defense needs talent, even though they already have talent, but I see that I can make this defense a possible legendary defense, I am without a doubt, like he said with DeForest Buckner, it is a no-brainer to pull that trigger, and now I have an all-pro at every level of my defense.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way there, Michael. It would be great to have an all-pro at every level. Jamal Adams being first round for him. If it's just a first-round pick, great. If we're giving out multiple first-round picks, I don't know if I want to risk it. I kind of want to just see how Malik plays out, along with Julian Blackmon and Kari Willis. But it wouldn't hurt to have another guy back there. I mean, just in coverage. But yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. So last week, Michael and I talked about our predictions for the upcoming season. We had Michael said that we were going to start the season 1-1, losing to the Vikings and beating the Jaguars. I went both wins against the Jaguars and Vikings. Cody, can you just real quick, talk about the Jaguars and Vikings so we can kind of see where you're staying in there?
Yeah, I'm with you, Justin. I went 2-0 against both these teams. I think if it was the other way around, where you're in Minnesota, that might change me a little bit there. But you're hosting Minnesota. Obviously, they're a talented team, but I don't know. I just have faith that the Colts play good at home, and so and then Jacksonville. I mean, you haven't won there for a while, but I think this year could be potentially different, especially because we know Jacksonville's kind of in a rebuilding mode. They got rid of a lot of their stars on that defense and just really everywhere. So I think that's more of a win, and this is probably your best chance to win that you've had in a few years. And so I think the Colts will pull that one off. And then, the Vikings are a talented team. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I just have a feeling that the Colts are kind of going to get off to a little bit of a hot start there by taking down the Vikings and be, a little bit of a surprise and kind of jump off to a really good start and start off the season really strong.
Yeah, and then so moving more into our schedule, the next two games we've got here are the Jets at home and then the Bears on the road. So the Jets game is one of our late games this season. We don't have many of them. We only have like 3 of them plus a Thursday night football game. I don't know how we managed to do this, but whatever. So let's talk about the Jets and Bears here. Again, like I said, Jets are at home, Bears on the road. I've got this going another 2 wins here. Colts starting off hot again on the season at 4-0. I think the Jets aren't going to be contending quite yet. Yes, they beat us last year, but I don't think they have a shot against us this year. As far as the Bears, it's really going to depend which quarterback are we going to see and how are they going to play. If Trubisky plays like he did against the Buccaneers last year and throws like 6 touchdowns, then they probably have a better chance of beating us. But I do agree with you, Cody. I think we do get off to a hot start here early in the season. I think we start 4-0. What about you guys?
Well, I think, the Jets are a team we haven't had a lot of success with lately. The games I can remember, we lost the Monday night game against them. We lost the 2018 game against them. We lost I believe it was the wild card game against them when Peyton was still there. With this year, I'm actually going to take the Colts. I'm going to take the Colts. I like their defense to stop whatever the Jets offense is going to be, because that team is just they still have a lot of questions to answer. So I'm going to go with the team that's better fit. I think they have the better head coach and possibly the better quarterback, better everything. So I'm going to take the Colts against the Jets. That's going to put them at 2-1. And with the Bears, Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, we don't know, but I'm going to take the Colts again. I think with this offensive line, you're going to think like, oh, man, Khalil Mack, he's going to get into Phillip Rivers. I think this is going to be a game where you're going to see the Colts ground and pound on the defense. Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor, that's going to be a game where they take over. So I'm going to take the Colts again against the Bears. They are now 3-1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going Colts could beat the Jets, like you said, for those reasons. But I just have a hard time with Soldier Field's such a hard place to play. The Colts are still early in the season, so I feel like the Colts offense is going to maybe take a little bit of time with all these new additions to kind of get in sync with each other. And then you throw in just how good this Bears defense is, especially at home. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be one of those games that's like really, really low score. But ultimately, I feel like that Bears defense at home is it's hard for me to bet against them. And so I'm going to actually take the Bears. And so I'm going to go, the Colts are going to be 3-1. So we're all in similar records here, except Justin's at 4-0. Michael, you and I are at 3-1 here. So that's who I'm going to go with there. Colts start out 3-1 in their first 4 games.
All right.
I'm really interested to see once we get going into the season, just to see who was right and who was wrong. I know I'm probably going to be right, but I mean, Michael, Cody, you guys are feeling 3-1. If we start 3-1, great. I mean, good job, guys, but feeling 4-0.
I just really hope we don't start 2-2 or 1-3 anymore. I'm so tired of those
man, I'm
starts.
tired of that too. I was kind of looking back here while you guys were both talking, and the last time Philip Rivers and Frank Reich were together was 2013 through 2015. 2013, Frank Reich was the quarterback coach at San Diego, and then in 14 and 15, he was the offensive coordinator. In 2013, Philip Rivers actually had his highest completion percentage at 69.5% in his career. And then 2015, he threw for his most completions and attempts in his career. So both actually pretty good numbers. And in 2015, he went 29 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So not a bad little run there going together. And I mean, we talked about a little bit in the beginning of the episode where Philip Rivers is really trying to learn more of that Frank Reich system and get back into the flow of things. So I'm hoping that pushes us to a very hot start going into the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, it's just so many new additions to this offense. I know you have T.Y. Hilton and a couple of those, receivers and Jack Doyle, obviously. But, like, you're adding a new running back, you're adding a new tight end, you're adding multiple new receivers. I don't know, and a new quarterback. Like, there's just a lot of moving parts to that. And so, ultimately, I think the Colts will have a better offense than they did last year. But I think it might take a little bit of time in order to get that all synced up to where they need to be and where they want to be. So that's just kind of where I'm at in terms of that offense.
And, I've actually been thinking about this, guys. I am high on the offense, and I'm with you guys. There is a lot of moving parts, and I think the worst case scenario with this, guys, is Philip Rivers plays like he did last year. There's no chemistry, and we finished the year like 4-12. Like that is like starting to get into my head a little bit more because you can't deny the talent, but there's got to be chemistry. The quarterback. I mean, we know Philip Rivers can be back and forth sometimes. He can be a great leader, and then he can be a sour leader. But I really hope for the best for the Colts that he is the great leader that they need him to be. I'm starting to sway a little bit back and forth whether they have success or not. But, man, the closer we get, man, it's already June. The closer we get, I'm getting nervous.
Man, Michael, you said 3-1 to start the season. Are you saying we're going to fall 1-11 in the last 12 games?
Look, man.
Oh, man.
That would be rough.
Hey, remember we started 1-5, and then we ended the season pretty good.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
That is.
Then we started 5-2 and ended 7-9. So you just don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't know, man. Something about the Colts, man. It don't happen with no one else. It don't happen with the Eagles, the Steelers, no one else, man. The Colts are the ones with these problems.
I mean, you're not wrong there. You're
golly, man. But for the most part, man, I think it's 9-7. For right now, I think it's 9-7. I gotta see how they are in training camp. I gotta see in preseason what these guys look like. I gotta see.
As long as we can all just agree that we hope that the Patriots end like 4-12 this year.
4-12. I'm hoping for 0-16.
Well, then they get Trevor Lawrence, and then it's just
right. I'm hoping they get like middle of the pack. Like I'm hoping that every year for the next 20 years, they're like 7-9, 8-8.
Even if they get Trevor Lawrence, they still don't have any offensive weapons.
That's true. I agree with you, Cody. I hope they're middle of the pack. I hope they're like the Bills of the last 20 years, where they're like mediocre and like they start off great and then end 7-9 or 6-12 or 6-10 or whatever.
Yeah.
So on a slightly brighter note here, we kind of talked about the offensive linemen on the Colts All-Decade team that we're running polls on Twitter. If nobody has heard, check out our Twitter accounts. We've got polls going up each day during the week. We broke down the offensive line, and then we talked about our defensive ends. To nobody's surprise, Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney were the clear-cut winners on our two defensive end positions. But since our last episode, we've had a couple more votes here, and we've talked about our defensive tackle. Now, this was kind of a big thing this past week where we all kind of started to realize, man, we have not had consistency over the last decade
Nope.
in our position. We're talking Danico Autry and Grover Stewart winning out the tiebreaker. Thank you, Cody, for the tiebreaker, because both Grover Stewart and Al Woods tied for that defensive tackle 2 spot. So again, Danico Autry, who's on the team now, but he was on the team 2018 to 19, and then Grover Stewart from 2017 to 19. That's our 2 defensive tackles for this all-decade team. How do you guys feel about that?
When I looked at the poll and everything, I saw that there was not a lot of really interesting names there. But before I get into Al Woods and Grover Stewart, I will say on David Perry and Henry Anderson, they were actually 2 pretty good players. I mean, I think you guys remember in their rookie year, they were thrown into the fire and they were playing pretty well in that 3-4 defense. They played pretty well. But unfortunately, they were in a horrible scheme. Their head coach was Chuck Pagano. Their coaches couldn't coach worth the crap. And David Perry decided to drink and drive on a golf cart, and Henry Anderson ended up getting traded. So those were a couple of busts for them, but I think they were 2 pretty good players. Now with Al Woods and Grover Stewart, I am probably gonna have to go Grover Stewart. I believe he was there longer, and I think he just produced a little more. Al Woods, it could go neck and neck. I wouldn't be mad if you went Al Woods or Grover Stewart. But in this one, I'm going Grover Stewart because I think he's quietly becoming one of the better nose tackles in the league.
Yeah, the fans agreed with you there. Something I found a little interesting here was that Henry Anderson actually got second place in voting on the DT1 position above Al Woods, but then he fell in the defensive tackle 2 position below Al Woods. So I don't know. I voted Henry Anderson, but whatever. Cody, how do you feel about Grover Stewart? I know you voted for him too.
Yeah, Grover Stewart. I mean, that just kind of shows you like just how there was really nobody that really stood out like through this entire decade, and just the management and how poor it was, and just everything. It's just such a terrible year and a terrible decade for the defense and specifically the defensive line. And so it's kind of crazy because you come off a decade where you have 2 of the best defensive ends arguably ever, and especially in Colts history, and then you go to not really having any defensive linemen. But like Grover Stewart's the only one that like I feel like has actually made a little bit of an impact. And so, I mean, he's been here since 2017, and he's probably one of the more longer tenured guys through the decade that's actually made an impact. So that's why I chose Grover Stewart, because I feel like he's the guy that's going to be even more long term. I think he's going to provide more for what the Colts are going to do, even over like a guy like Danico Autry or Al Woods or any of those guys.
Yeah, it kills me how poor that position has been, but it makes me feel good that Buckner hopefully should be able to hold this in for quite a while, considering how young he is. So, and then a couple of the other polls here we got our outside linebacker positions. Robert Mathis took the first outside linebacker position over Darius Leonard. He's the only person so far that has been voted on the all-decade team in 2 different positions. So, of course, he took the right end position, correct? Yeah, right end. No, I'm sorry. Wow, I'm terrible at this. He took the left end position because that's, the position he played. And then now he's got the outside linebacker 1 spot. Just a reminder, in 2012 when Chuck Pagano came in, they switched to the 3-4 defense. He became an outside linebacker. He transitioned to the outside linebacker position from 2012 to 2016. That's why he was on here. For that outside linebacker 2 spot, I don't think it was very hard to say that Darius Leonard was going to win this. 95.9%, even only playing for 2 years in this last decade. So On our outside linebackers, we've got Robert Mathis and Darius Leonard. How do you guys feel about that being on a team at their prime?
Dude, that would be incredible, man. That would. Oh my gosh, two guys who are capable of getting some sacks. I mean, you got a true dog in Robert Mathis. You got the maniac in Darius Leonard, dude. That defense would wreak havoc. It's kind of like I was telling Cody leading up in the draft, like who I would take, and it's just throwing this list of players, this depth chart at an offensive coordinator and say, best of luck to you. Hope you can find a way to stop him.
So we're just going to move on, Michael.
Okay.
This week, just kind of putting out what you guys should be looking out for. We've got the middle linebacker position coming up, and then both cornerback positions all in polls this week. So, again, check out our Twitter accounts at Colts Brawl to find all of our polls coming out. We're almost finished with the all-decade team. We've got just a couple more positions left, so be sure to check that out. And then, Michael, do you got anything else? Do you have any fun, exciting stories about the Colts coming up?
Oh, man. I plan on writing a piece about our trio of young defensive ends coming up on the defensive line, so be on the lookout for that article. Nothing else for me, man. Just stay blessed, guys. Have a great week. Just make smart decisions, man. Just spread positivity. That's all I can say, man. Just stay blessed and stay tuned for more Colts content.
All right, guys. See you next week on Colts Brawl.